Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ticklish Business, the podcast all about celebrating and honoring old Hollywood. As always, I'm Kristen Lopez, and this week we are going to be stealing some art with the wonderful Audrey Hepburn, Peter O'Toole comedy from 1966, How to Steal a Million. And to do that, I am joined by my partner in crime for this episode, the wonderful and amazing Princess Weeks. How are you?
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me. I love your writing. I love your work. Film critic to film critic, really appreciate all that you do. And I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite little Audrey Hepburn movies.
I don't remember which episode of your YouTube channel, which if you guys aren't subscribed to her channel, you should be, because it's wonderful. And she did a great episode about 12 Angry Men that I was bummed that I have not had 12 Angry Men on this podcast.
Oh my God, a great film.
Great film. But I forget what episode you mentioned that this was one of your favorite movies. I think I've had this in my back pocket for like a year, just waiting for the opportunity to have you on for this episode.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, exactly. But before we get into that, we'd love to remind everybody, if you are not over on our YouTube at youtube.com/@ticklishbusiness, you should be, because we are doing video now. Please make it worth my while. And we are always on all social media apps at Ticklish Biz, unless it's Instagram, where it's at Ticklish_biz. And our Patreon keeps the lights on at Ticklish Biz HQ and lets me do fun things like this episode, and lets my dog chew on my notepad while I'm doing this podcast. That's at patreon.com/ticklishbiz. And for just $1, you can get all sorts of things, including these episodes 48 hours early. We're doing a Zoom mixer in August. It's going to be really fun. So head over there to learn more. How to Steal a Million. This is directed by William Wyler, based on a George Bradshaw short story. Tells the story of Nicole Bonet, played by Audrey Hepburn, whose father is the premier art forger of the world. He's done Van Goghs, Picassos, all of that, and has made a fortune. But she's always concerned that he's going to get caught, and he decides to loan one of the museums his iconic Cellini Venus, which is fake, and it was modeled after his mother, Nicole's grandmother. And unfortunately, he does not realize when he loans it to the museum that they will authenticate it. And Nicole is trying to spare him going to jail, so she decides to steal it. How does she do that? She enlists the help of the charming Simon Dermott, played by Peter O'Toole, who is a art thief, and the two create this heist together. So I want to know, what about this movie? When did you first see it? What's your background with it? Why is it one of your favorite Audrey Hepburn movies?
Well, so my dad is a huge cinema lover, and he loves Audrey Hepburn movies. So I grew up watching My Fair Lady and Sabrina. And so we were always watching different movies together. And this was one of the ones that we really enjoyed watching together, because it's got that father-daughter element to it. And I do love just the whole sequence of like the beginning of Audrey Hepburn's character, like just going into the closet and going up the stairs. It just has this great vibe to it. The sets are really beautiful. And I'm also, funny enough, a huge William Wyler fan. I love so much of his filmography, obviously love Roman Holiday. And so it just became one of those movies that I like to revisit every once in a while, because it's just so beautiful. And I also love, like, I believe this was the film where Audrey Hepburn collaborated with Givenchy. And so like all of her outfits are like custom made Givenchy outfits. And so it's just like great sets, beautiful costumes, and like a really funny romance heist shenanigans.
Yeah, so this was my first watch of the movie. I had never seen it, and I am fascinated by how it fits in everybody's oeuvre. And we're going to talk about that, because it's really a turning point for Audrey Hepburn. It was a bit of a turning point for Peter O'Toole, William Wyler, all of them. And it's definitely a fun, zippy little comedy. You know, it has Wyler done better work? Sure. Has Audrey Hepburn done better work? Sure. But I don't think that you've seen them this irreverent before, you know? And I think casting Peter O'Toole is the real genius part of this, because you could have gone for a Cary Grant and done charade again, you know, but he brings something so unique to it because at the time he was really looking for something different. He had played a lot of serious guys. He wanted to play a Cary Grant-esque character. And I think the fact that he's a fresher face kind of changes everything.
And I believe, if I remember correctly, originally they wanted it to be like another, you know, Cary Grant, Gregory Peck kind of vision, but then they picked Peter O'Toole, who scandalously was like 3 years younger than Audrey Hepburn, and everyone was like, oh my God.
He was 33, she was 36. How dare you be over 35, women of the world.
Robbing the cradle, just like...
That is something that is jarring for Audrey Hepburn fans, especially because, yeah, if you've seen Charade or you've seen Love in the Afternoon or you've seen Funny Face, these movies where she's often the ingenue playing against a guy who's at least 20 years her senior, and we're all just kind of like, I like it, but I'm still skeeved by it. You know, Sabrina, I think, is the one where people tend to have that line in the sand of Bogart just being like, nope, it does not work.
It's ridiculously, like, you watch it and you're just like, girl, that's not your man. Like, that's just not...
I think also just because in Sabrina, she has such, like, of course, because they were dating, virulent chemistry with Bill Holden that you're just like, yeah, no, there was not a chance in hell that she was going to be ready for Bogart. And I think that in this case, having her play opposite against Peter O'Toole was a really, really good move. So I was charmed by this.
Yeah.
But it is a different type of heist film, I think. You know, when I read the plot, I don't really know what I expected. You know, this is a lengthy movie. It's about 2 hours. And it does take a fair amount of time to get going to the heist. You know, the heist feels very ad hoc. Like they're just kind of thinking it up as they go along, which we'll talk spoilers in a little bit, is the point. You know, like it's not supposed to be a smart heist because of what you find out about certain characters by the end of the movie. But that was something that in reading a lot of the criticism of the film, and this was a movie that got mixed reviews.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of critics did not like that Wyler didn't get to the heist quicker. Fair assessment?
I think so. I think that, you know, it's interesting seeing how, like, genre was treated in this time period where people were very stickler for it. Like, they like their routine. They like it to fit all the bunches. And I think also Wyler is just, like, an incredible director. Like, he has so few misses in his oeuvre that I think people were like, what are we doing here? You know, like, it's like, and I think especially because of his relationship with Audrey Hepburn and the way that he just has been known of being this, like, he makes movies where women win Oscars or get nominated for Oscars in. And so I think that comes with so many expectations. And he was playing, I think, like, having a fun time with this. It's like his second to last big movie because the next one will be Funny Girl.
Yeah.
And so I think he was just trying to have a good time. I think he was trying to have fun. The last movies he did was like Ben-Hur, The Collector, The Children's Hour. It's like, let a little boy have a little fun, little shenanigans, you know?
Exactly. No, you're right on because, yeah, you look at that run in the 1960s and he's clearly doing something. Like, he's trying to, like, go through some things because, I mean, Ben-Hur, you know, I make fun of it as an unintentionally homoerotic movie that Charlton Heston did not know was homoerotic. But then he enters the 60s and, yeah, he does The Children's Hour, which, of course, is a very queer-coded film as well.
One of my favorites.
It's great. It's a great movie. And then he does The Collector, which is a real unsung gem. If people listening or watching have not seen The Collector, oh my gosh, Samantha Eggar, it's brilliant. But I mean, three very dark, The Collector, I think, was a bit smaller scale for him compared to the other two, not big stars, you know, filmed in Britain. But he's clearly trying some things. And then he eventually makes this pivot, and then after that does Funny Girl. But then in the 1970s, really struggles to make his, you know, make his mark. His last major film is the liberation of LB Jones, which is not necessarily a big success for him with Lee J. Cobb. And then he does some shorts and then he dies. So this kind of is at the beginning of the end of his career. But he had worked so skillfully with Audrey Hepburn. He discovered her. I mean, he discovered her for Roman Holiday, gets her the Oscar, gets her the Oscar nomination, and then returns with her for the Children's Hour. And I think they have just such a great frothy chemistry between the two of them. He really knew how to use her bubbliness and her brightness. Some would say, I have some friends who are not Audrey Hepburn fans, and they've talked about her being, I know, and they've talked about her being wooden, and I think in this case, he takes what could be perceived as woodenness in her character of Nicole and kind of creates this vulnerability. She's the one straight man in this world of thievery, right?
She's the adult in the room for a lot of this film. And you know what I think is, like, I'm also a big Bette Davis fan. So it's like, I think it's just interesting how he picks projects for each of his leading lady eras that really illustrate what they are good at. And I think that Audrey Hepburn, what could be seen as stoic, is very good at depicting dignity. And so when you have her being the straight man, it's kind of like a Muppets movie where she's the only human and everyone else is kind of like a Muppet. It's kind of that kind of energy where she's just really trying to like navigate the situation and everyone is just like either someone she loves or someone she is really frustrated with.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the rest of this cast, the movie really revolves around her and O'Toole. Hugh Griffith plays the dad. And I'm far more distracted, I think, by his magnificent facial hair in this movie than I am his acting. But I mean, the movie doesn't really play up their dynamic in the sense that he's the father and daughter. That's it. There's no real come to Jesus moment. She's the adult trying to make it work. And then you have kind of some of these other side characters, most specifically Eli Wallach's Davis Leland, who is this art obsessive to the point of like, I feel like
ridiculousness.
We need to be covering the art because I'm afraid of what he's going to do to it. He's just very extra.
It's very horny. I was actually in working on my video for the Odyssey. I was reading this book called Talking Classics by Mary Beard, and she talks about this story of this guy who was so overwhelmed by this statue of Venus that he like copulated with it and then threw himself off a cliff. And I'm like, that is 1,000%
that's the energy we are getting right here. Yes, that is. That wasn't supposed to be Eli Wallach. It was supposed to be George C. Scott.
Yes, but he messed up.
Yeah, George C. Scott, apparently, depending on which story you read, either he told William Wyler he was going to be late on the first day, or he was out carousing the night before in Paris and did not show up the first day. And either way, Wyler fired him. And honestly, I think that's for the best because George C. Scott, I get funny in like a Doctor Strangelove way, like where it's more satirical. I think with Eli Wallach, you need somebody that's not intimidating, that doesn't seem aggressive. And I feel like George C. Scott gives off a real aggressive vibe.
Yeah, even if you go retroactively with like Peyton, it's just like, I just don't know if I believe you're chill.
As an actor, great, one of the great character actors of our time, and he does such good work in this kind of really bizarre role. Like he wants to marry Nicole purely to get his hands on
her art,
on her art. Gives her this big ass ring that I'm not 100% sure, but it looks exactly like Marilyn Monroe's ring from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Oh, that's
so
a good
I'm
point.
tempted to assume that and I know this because thanks to one of the Hollywood Classics collections that does recreations, I own a recreation, obviously not real, of that ring, and it looks like that. So would not surprise me if they borrow jewelry. But this is the same year that Eli Wallach does Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So like very prim and proper kind of straight man energy and then goes straight into, one of the biggest westerns of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's good. He's doing good work here. I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah. He's charming enough in a film that like he's easily out charmed, but it's not his fault. Cause like I always am so surprised about how charismatic and fun Peter O'Toole is. Cause to me, I grew up with old Peter O'Toole. It's like
Same.
to me, I'm like, he's an old man. Like that's Anton Ego. Like, like that.
He's the dad from Troy, to throw out another Grecian reference.
Yes. He's so that character. So when you see him kind of young and funny and really charming, you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot you had this in you.
Exactly. I think it's also worth being astounded because if you're like me and you've read about, like, if you've read about the Hollywood Hellfire Club and like the fact that him and Oliver Reed and all these Brit guys were like carousing and pretty much known for drinking and sleeping with women,
like the OG pussy posse kind of.
Exactly. Never done it better. But to read O'Toole's work about his career, it's easy to forget he was one of the premier actors of his time. And again, this was a different role for him. He wanted to play a charming, Cary Grant leading man. And I think that the Wyler and especially the DP, Charles Lang, make him, they almost, I don't want to say objectify him, but they film him in a way almost that is like a young woman. The fact that when he first meets Nicole, he's holding the painting in front of him and all you see are these big blue eyes and you're just like, damn, okay.
He's the ingenue. Like, he's so an ingenue.
he's the ingenue of this movie. And I mean, I've never thought of Peter O'Toole, sorry ladies, not my cup of tea, but that introduction, which feels so much like, to use the obvious old school reference, John Wayne's cameo or introduction in Stagecoach. You're watching this and you're like, oh, this is a new star. This is a new, it's such an old Hollywood introduction. And he's so charming. He's got that line where he's talking about making her wear the washerwomen clothes. And he's like, you're going to give Givenchy a night off, which was an ad lib. That was not in the script. He just came up with that. And according to Wyler, O'Toole and Hepburn riffed a lot.
I could see that.
They had a real natural chemistry with each other, and they enjoyed spending time together. Of course, the tabloids wanted to make it more into more of what it was and kept emphasizing that they were having an affair.
Close, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Which, Hepburn and O'Toole both denied, and even Wyler said, like, no, they just enjoyed each other's company. They enjoyed making each other laugh. And you can see that, especially in the sequence in the closet when they finally get to the museum and they're locked in the closet. And the way that they just have this natural, like, push and pull of being together, that physical closeness, it's so effortless.
Yeah. And I think it really speaks to how good Hepburn is as a co-star. Like, I feel like one of her big strengths as a leading lady is that she really does lead. Like, her and her male co-hosts, co-stars, excuse me, like really know how to push and pull with each other. And I think it's like her ballet training. Like, she's very good at letting her leading men lead in a way where she still remains present. And I think that just adds to a little bit of gracefulness.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'd be interested, of course we'll never know because critics are critics, but how much the fact that she is the star of this movie. She doesn't have an established leading man to play off of, because if you think about it, in something like Roman Holiday, she has Gregory Peck, who's already an established star, funny face. Fred Astaire is already an established star. When she does the children's hour, it's really all on her. But even then, it's a trio. It's a balance between her and Shirley MacLaine and even James Garner. Yeah. Here, she's it. She is the lead of this movie. And I wonder how much the critiques about the film and her performance in it has to do with the fact that we had never seen her lead a film. And then, of course, once she does this, once she does My Fair Lady, everything kind of changes. And this is really a big push for her. I mean, and again, Breakfast at Tiffany's, somebody could be yelling at the, at the screen right now, like, she was the lead in Breakfast at Tiffany's. She anchored that movie, right? But you also have a Truman Capote script, and you have some other things here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that, like, Breakfast at Tiffany's, it was not as intense as, like, doing Gone with the Wind, but it's not entirely inaccurate to say that it was already, like, it was Twilight. You know what I mean? It was, like, already a phenomenon. Like, people were going to see that film being adapted. I mean, that book being adapted, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Audrey Hepburn in the 60s is fascinating. You know, she does The Unforgiven, not a big movie in her oeuvre. Breakfast at Tiffany's, of course, is huge. Children's Hour, Charade, and then Paris When It Sizzles, which was a very difficult production for her, and I think for everybody involved with that movie, which is pretty much a mess, but it's still fun. And then she does My Fair Lady the same year, and then she took a 2-year break. And this was her big return to the screen after this 2-year absence. And she does, you know, this, Two for the Road, Wait Until Dark, which is, again, a very different film. And then
one of my favorites, too.
Yeah, exactly. And then, again, walks away from Hollywood for almost a decade before she comes back for Robin and Marian in the back half of her career when she's Grand Dame Audrey Hepburn. So I thought it was really interesting to see how this movie is this real turning point. It's the beginning of the end for Wyler's career, and it marks this new turn for Hepburn as she's starting to enter being 40, you know, of trying to find parts that are going to sustain her before ultimately deciding, like, you know, she wants to raise kids and, you know, become a philanthropist and not necessarily have critics doing what they did to Betty Davis, you know, or Joan Crawford being like, why aren't you retired? You're old now.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's interesting about Hepburn in interviews is that she would always talk down about her own range. Like, I think that she found herself or saw herself to be limited as an actress, which I think is sad. But she was always very critical of herself, saying that she couldn't do what some other actresses could do. And I think she was someone who was very aware of being perceived as this graceful, elegant ingenue. I think, again, it's that ballerina mindset. And it's interesting because I think so many people don't know that she lived until she was like 63 years old, that we have pictures of like an older Audrey Hepburn because she's so encased in amber up until that point in her career, like with Breakfast at Tiffany's, as you said before, being like sort of the pinnacle of her career. And so I think it's really interesting how she does have this post acting legacy, but it's so overshadowed by like the beauty of that ingenue like Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah, and people forget, you know, 63 is not that old, you know.
Yeah, she had cancer.
She died of a very rare cancer. And I think for a lot of people, that truncated career is even more enhanced by the fact that she did end up dying, you know, relatively young in her life. And, you know, to watch this was a big change for her, aesthetically as well. You know, she's got the Givenchy wardrobe, which I love. I was reading online that, you know, her and Hubert Givenchy were very, very close to the point that, like, Givenchy designed her children's christening dresses. And her husband, Mel Ferrer, thought that it was bizarre, like creepy. He was very, and I mean, you can read about Mel Ferrer, not exactly the best husband, but you know, definitely he felt a way about their dynamic. But it works so well here. You know, they cut her hair, which I love that Audrey Hepburn, two very distinct hairstyles between this and Roman Holiday. They cut her hair even shorter. They gave her that Cleopatra kind of cat's eye makeup, and they put her in just the epitome of mod fashions. And that's so smart because if you look at old Hollywood, you and I both know that there are some movies that people just watch them and they're like, how is this contemporary? Like, how did people, it's so stodgy. And Audrey Hepburn is one of those that is so synonymous with, I think, people that don't know, kind of old school, like 1950s. But no, she really became the face of mod styles after this movie. The dress with the black lace and the veil when she's at the restaurant. I mean,
her big her beehive hairstyle, like all of those things are very like transitional to this period. And you're so right. She kind of gets pigeonholed to previous eras. I think that You know, even when you look at like her main picture, it's very much like either her really close knit hair from Roman Holiday, or maybe a little bit of the pullback from Sabrina.
Yeah, or
Mhm.
Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is
Tiffany's.
early 60s,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that to watch her in these kind of short dresses, I think Blow Up had come out right around the
Mhm.
time of this movie, so clearly everybody was taking from the mod kind of look. But you think of that driving outfit in that first sequence where she's got the little white cap with the strap under the
Mhm.
chin, which I want one now. I don't know where.
It's such a great hat. It
I
reminded me of the
yeah.
Zendaya hat that everyone always talks
Yes,
about. Like I was like, oh my god, an Austacious hat.
I was like, I need this. I need this hat. Where am I going to wear it? Who the hell cares?
Who
Okay.
cares?
But it really did kind of rejuvenate her look
Mhm.
and give people this kind of new side to her. I do want to talk about the heist part once they get to the actual museum and the heist.
Mhm.
I can only imagine what somebody at the studio thought when they read the script by Harry Kurnitz and were like, so wait, there's going to be like a half an hour, 20-minute sequence of these two just in a closet together, staring at each other and talking. And then at one point, he's going to like get a magnet and use that. And we watch a key being moved for like 5 minutes. I
Mhm.
can only imagine what somebody at the studio was thinking reading this, but it plays so well in how
Mhm.
deceptively, some would say stupidly simple it all is.
Well, I think, it reminds me of why I love the romantic comedy. And I feel like it's why casting is so important. It's why chemistry reads are so important. Music, which I think this is like an early John Williams movie as well, which is like
he's
all like a
credited he's credited as Johnny Williams.
so
What?
funny. I know. It's like you forget how old he is. Like that man has been working since like child labor laws. But I think all those moments are so funny. Like I found myself sort of like kicking a little bit of like, oh my god, they're in the thing together. That's so funny. Like to me it's so entertaining because they're such great performers that those sequences really like are engaging. And I think it's a testament to just really good direction. Like I get how it could be boring for somebody else, but not for me. I was like,
No,
they're in the closet. They're in the closet.
when I think too, you think of something like Charade,
Mhm.
which is akin, right?
Mhm.
It's also kind of a spy film, but it's this who's zooming who type of movie. And
Mhm.
in that film, Audrey Hepburn's character is lovelorn when she isn't constantly scared of everything. And
Mhm.
here I don't get scared. I get more like she just doesn't want to get caught. Like she's
Mhm.
trying to overcome that with this like inner fire of I have to save my dad. And I think that having somebody like O'Toole, again, not an established actor to American
Mhm.
audiences, he's able to create that authority, but it doesn't overpower her. I
Yeah.
talk a lot on the show about actors that worked well with a female lead who doesn't
Mhm.
overshadow them. And O'Toole's given kind of like a Joel McCrea vibe here, where he's just like, I'm going to be strong support,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to dominate. And I think that watching those sequences where you have that build up where he's got the little boomerangs and you're like, why the
Yeah.
hell is he throwing them? And you realize that it's to get them to think that the alarms are malfunctioning, so they'll turn them off. There's just these simple things that I have to think would inspire other heist films down the line. I
Mhm.
don't remember when the original Thomas Crown Affair comes out,
Mhm.
but 68. So, yeah, I mean, you have to wonder if 2 years later, when you have the splashy heist scenes in that film, if they were looking at this at all for inspiration.
Yeah. It definitely feels like when you're watching it, it's like the thing I think is so fun about watching older movies is that you can really see archetypes being built. And I think this is one of those movies where you really do see how so many romantic tropes become solidified in these art forms. And I think Audrey Hepburn just happened to be at the forefront of so many of them, which I think is funny. Like, she's at one point like the stoic girl, she's the manic pixie dream girl, she's the sex worker with a heart of gold. She's so many things. And I just feel like those small moments where you get to see her be the straight man is just, it's such a good I think coupling, because I just finished watching My Fair Lady with my father like a couple of weeks ago. So it's always funny to go from her being someone who has like the negligent father who's like, with a little bit of luck, your children will be supporting you, to now being like, no, I have to take care of my dad.
I mean, I'm somebody that does not like My Fair Lady. I'm one of those where I think most of it, I think 80% of it is Rex Harrison. I
Yeah.
think that's part of it, and then a little bit of it is the Cockney accent, and then the rest of it is just it's so long, but I think too we keep talking about how ahead of its time this movie really is, and I was struck by something that Kimberly Lindberghs wrote for TCM, and she said, quote, "In some ways the frivolous nature and glorified glamour of Wyler's film seemed completely out of touch with the times, but it also offered audiences a welcome escape from the Vietnam War, civil unrest, and cultural upheaval that the world was facing." And I was just watching a documentary about John Borman the other day, and they were talking about how the late 60s really ushers in this collapse of the studio system, right? Where you're seeing a lot of established directors take these big swings with big movies. You can go listen to our episode that we did on Dr. Dolittle as a great example of that.
Another Rex Harrison banger.
Rex Harrison joint. The movies start to get longer, the movies start to get bigger, and the movies start to lose more money. And I do think that you are seeing kind of that turn a little bit in 1966, leading up to 1967 when In the Heat of the Night comes out, where you have directors that are just trying to figure out what the sea change is, trying to figure out what's going on. And Wyler, I mean, he didn't really make a lot of effort after. He did do Funny Girl, which is very much one of the few successful big scale musicals to come out in the late 60s before Hello Dolly.
Hello Dolly.
Allegedly is the nail in the coffin. I don't know. I think it's just the last big one that kind of cemented it. But Wyler that was kind of his last big hit, and then he enters the 70s and doesn't really know what's going on, and then he dies. So you are slowly starting to see, I think, audiences kind of be like, when I was reading reviews of this movie, a lot of people critiqued how he shows off Paris. They filmed this on location.
Yeah.
Which
it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous and was a huge expense to the studio.
Oh, yeah.
But that was a detriment. Critics talked about how much of a detriment that was, that he spent so much time showing off Paris and showing off the beauty of the city at the expense of the story. And I was struck by how good cinematography became something that in 1966 audiences, critics were not interested in.
How the times have changed.
Well, yeah, because I would say that locations and kind of opulence we're seeing. I mean, look at something like The Odyssey. The money's on the screen. You're seeing
very much.
You're seeing it, and I want to quote Richard Schickel, who was the meanest of the reviewers that I read, and he called this, quote, "just another distressingly typical big comedy of our times, overdressed and underfunny," and that's before he called Audrey Hepburn an upper-class Debbie Reynolds. Which I was just like,
how dare you? She is a survivor.
I was like, that seems offensive to Audrey Hepburn and Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah.
Like, really? And I kept trying. I thought about that. Like, literally, I had one of those moments where I was awake at like 3 a.m. Like, what did he mean by that?
Right. It's like, who do you think you are?
Debbie Reynolds at this point, very much kind of pigeonholed into this type of specific
every woman type
of role. She'd gone through the big, the shenanigans with Cleopatra and was a tabloid darling. So I think to call Audrey Hepburn an upper class Debbie Reynolds, that seems to not understand the allure of Audrey Hepburn or Debbie Reynolds.
Right. And how different those personas are. I mean, like, that's just the nature of, like, even though it's like we're a little bit post this the peak studio system, but like that's how it was. Like Debbie Reynolds was the dungarees girl. She's the girl who like can sing and dance and do all those things. And like Audrey Hepburn, you know, is not. She is not that person.
No, and I think Schickel seems to utilize Debbie Reynolds' name here almost like a wholesomeness, you know, like she's just, and Audrey Hepburn, yeah, she comes off as you know, elegant. I never get wholesome from her.
Yeah.
You know, like I get sweet. Yeah. I get sweet, but you know, if I'm thinking of like wholesome old Hollywood stars, you have Debbie Reynolds, maybe Sandra Dee, you know. Yeah.
Because Audrey Hepburn was in these streets. I always tell people, don't forget, my girl was in these streets.
She was foraging in the woods, you know, for mushrooms and stuff. Okay, so Richard Schickel, what the hell? Explain yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I don't get that. But the heist is so drawn out and I think so skillful. I would love to see, like, I don't know, an actual thief or somebody tell me, like, are there flaws in that plan? Because I'm usually the first one to be like, well, that could have happened, and then it would have ruined the whole thing. I don't see that here.
Yeah. I also think, like, I understand that, like, these things go through highs and lows of trends and how people can be exhausted with, like, an overblown situation. But I also don't think that we were having a lot of movies like this at this time for it to be, like, specifically overdone. It is about art. It is, like, it to me, it fits the narrative that we're seeing. It doesn't feel like we're being audacious for the sake of it. I think it's trying to tell a story about art and the nature of beauty. And like also with the whole forgery aspect of like how easy it is to fake it in front of all these rich people. Even the whole thing where the father is like, I don't cheat regular people. I'm cheating billionaires. I'm like, yeah. And we love to see it.
Yeah, I was like, he's a modern day Robin Hood. You know, well, let's do more of this, actually. Yeah. This is timely. And I love that the production designer, let me get his name right, Alexander Trauner, he actually employed some of the best forgers in Paris to make the art for this film. I think this is Wyler talking, where he says, quote, the paintings were not exact copies. Where Renoir had 3 nudes, the fake Renoir would have 2, and the canvas to be a different size. And I think that's so cool that like they were actually employing fake artists to create fake art. And they said at a certain point the art from the movie was exhibited in a museum. They're like, where modern people, you know, and actual authenticators could immediately tell it was fake.
Right.
And so I think that's very cool, because now, you know, you'd probably get like AI or somebody to like, you know, just, you know, record or print out something, and then you're going to see it for 30 seconds. But Charles Lang's cinematography really does showcase, you know, the close-ups of the Venus. I do love that Simon immediately is able to see the resemblance between the Venus and Audrey Hepburn. I do not see it, but
I know it's love. It's love in his eyes.
It's love. And I love that the picture of her grandmother is Audrey Hepburn, pretty much dressed like she's My Fair Lady, which I was like, glad we're recycling and making references there. Of course, in the third act, they pull it off. They get the Venus back. Everything's going to be cool. And then you realize Simon reveals that he's actually not a thief. That was his first heist. He's a heist virgin. He's actually a detective trying to prove that her father is forging paintings at the behest of Charles Boyer, who is here for a couple of scenes sitting behind a desk. I'm glad that he got that check. And I think that, again, I love that you're supposed to believe in, and you believe it equal. You believe that Peter O'Toole is a thief. He seemed like he knew what he was doing. And you also believe that he's a detective. You're like, the guy contains multitudes.
It was when I saw that twist, it reminded me so much of Clue at like one of the alternative endings with Mr. Green, I think it is, where he's like, I'm a cop, and I'm just like, gas.
You're like, yes. I would love to know if they took that for Clue, because, you know, even the fact that it's Michael McKean, you know, he's this milquetoast guy, and of course Simon's whole thing is like, your dad's going to stop doing it. And I think too, you know, I read a couple reviews where they were like, oh, the love story develops out of the blue between Simon and Nicole. And I don't necessarily think I agree with that. I think that we're not used to seeing, certainly I don't think we're used to seeing it in studio era films of love growing organically over time. You know, it's usually like grand gestures and grand gestures and like, let you slap my face and then I make out with you against your will, and then your hands are all balled up and then they unfurl because you love me now. You know, those are the types of things. We're not used to seeing two people, again, talk in a closet for like 15 minutes and slowly start to realize like, oh, I'm into
I have
you.
Feelings. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a slope. Like, that's why I keep going back to like a classic romantic comedy. Like, not so much bringing up baby, but it reminds me of that kind of energy of like the hijinks, a little bit of the heist. But to me, it all fits in. Not that it all fits. I think it all works because of the chemistry between the actors. I think that that's such a huge part of how you build a narrative like that. I think if it was blah, blah. I think that if it was with a different set of actors, I would feel differently about it. But I think that it really is very much carried by the people that we have on stage, on screen.
Yeah, exactly. I love that the FU at the end is that Davis, the Eli Wallach character, ends up getting the fake Venus with the engagement ring attached to it. I thought that was a nice little like, okay. And of course the movie ends with her father not going to stop doing what he's doing. And somebody shows up looking to get a Picasso, and when Simon asks Nicole who that is, she says it's his cousin. And he's like, he knows that she's lying. And I think that too, there's a real grand tradition in film, old Hollywood film. I don't know if you've seen one of my favorite pre-codes, which is Trouble in Paradise from 1932.
Oh, I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, it's great. Miriam Hopkins, Herbert Marshall, Kay Francis. But it's one of those movies where the allure between the two, the sexual attraction, and in Trouble in Paradise, it is overtly sexual, is from the fact that they're committing crimes.
Ooh,
so, you know,
okay, horny for crime.
Yes. So there's like a whole scene in Trouble in Paradise where the two of them, Miriam Hopkins and Herbert Marshall, are having this conversation, and they're both talking about what they've stolen from each other when they were having this conversation. And he's like, well, I stole your garter while we were talking. And she's like, what? And I get that vibe from the end of How to Steal a Million, in the sense that, like, she's going to be maybe lying. They might maybe do some more heist. She's into it now. Like, she's all into crime. And he's just like, I'm not for this. I'm a man of the law. But
for you,
yes,
it could be like that, like Batman and Catwoman, like she steals and he catches her, that kind of thing. Which, you know, I am pro robbing rich. As long as
so I do think that, to go back to the point about this movie offering an escape from Vietnam and the cultural unrest and everything, I think that Wyler really is trying to hold on to the last vestiges of what made romantic comedy films so iconic, which is these kind of high concept premises and this idea that, you know, no, to quote Joey Brown in Some Like It Hot, you know, nobody's perfect. That these are two people that might not be good people. You know, they might steal from the rich, they might commit crimes, but that's the turn on for them, and we're okay with that.
Exactly. And you know what? It's a little feminist, you know? Let women be horny for crime, you know?
Audrey Hepburn, horny for crime. I'm going to make I need to make a shirt.
I'll have the mug of that. I love a mug. So, like, if you do, I'll buy it, because
it'll go great with my Makoko mug. Speaking of movies where people are horny for crime, Judy Garland in The Pirate for Gene Kelly, great example. So
Judy Garland, I love her so much.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, I'm really glad I got to see this. I'm glad that I got to talk to you about it, because I think it's something that it's on the FXM channel all the time. And I was like, I have no incentive to watch this, but I have. And I think that it's a really great kind of like last hurrah film before everything we know and love about the old Hollywood system just kind of implodes and is replaced by the 1970s, which also has now imploded into whatever the hell we have right now constructing for our film landscape. So Yeah. Any final thoughts on How to Steal a Million before we wrap it up?
I'm pro critic, but sometimes, they miss the mark. But that's okay. I think that the critic system was so different then anyway. But I do think this movie is beautiful to watch. I think filming it on location was worth it. Sorry, guys. Paris is a great background set. And I think that Audrey Hepburn is just one of my favorite classical Hollywood actresses, not because I think her range is so phenomenal, but I think she can always perfectly encompass whatever the character she's doing needs to be in a way that I think is just so unique to her. And like, no one can really beat my goat, Betty Davis, but like, she is within, like, in my mind, like one of the top 5, 6 actresses of her generation.
100%. We'll have to have you back to talk about Betty Davis now. So.
I'm a Jezebel apologist. Like, if I have to watch a movie about plantation women, I want it to be 90 minutes long. I like, I just want to be in and out.
Okay, so I will have to, now that I know this, I'm putting Jezebel on the list, and we will find a time, and that's gonna happen, because
I have so much fun Jezebel lore. Like, every time I make a friend watch it, I'm just like, right now at this moment, Jane Fonda is being born as this movie is being.
We can talk about plantations,
all of that,
the Gone with the Wind wars. Okay, Henry Fonda, secret asshole. Yeah, look it up. Henry Fonda, not the best guy, but we still love him. So yeah, next time.
Yes.
But oh my god, the great Princess Week. So excited
thank
that
you
we
so
got
much.
to have you on. Where can fans find you online? Anything you have coming up that they should know about?
You can mostly find me on YouTube, Princess Weeks. I have video essays coming out. I am working on having my video on the Odyssey be up by the end of July, because I had so many thoughts, but I was like, I gotta really dig into it. But that's my big thing that I'm really excited about coming out soon. And my cat is here, and that's all that really matters to me.
We love it. We love cats. I have a dog now. The cat's hater. But, they're learning to live together. And I'm ready for the Odyssey video. I need to have some other clear-minded folk talking about that, because it's a movie that I liked, and apparently that is a controversial statement.
I think it's a movie that, like, my brother, he called me, he's like, I think it's his greatest movie yet, and I'm like, and I'm sure you think that.
Yep.
But you know what, I think it's become this really toxic place where, like, we can't all, like, critique a movie differently, but still have the respect of, like, I see your perspective. It becomes this, like, zero-sum game, and, like, I don't want to fight with people over movies I didn't make. It's not like I made the film, so why am I taking this so personally? Like, eat a Snickers, steal a painting,
Exactly.
Take that entry and steal some art.
Exactly, yes. Put on your little Audrey Hepburn hat, drive a fancy car, steal some art.
Exactly.
Of course, everybody can find me online at Kristen K. Lopez, unless it's Instagram, where I'm at Kristen Lopez 88. Please, again, and you can always read my work over at thefilmmaven.com. You can read my Odyssey review, all sorts of fun stuff over there as well. So we will be back in 2 weeks doing a Robert Redford top 3, which I am going to be trying to figure out what the hell. There's so many options. So stay tuned for that. We'll see